Hello there. Hello. Please let me know when I'm invited and whether or not you can hear me. Hello. I'm going to adjust this light while I wait to be invited. Looks about the same. I won't mess with it. Hey, you can hear me. I'm invited. Yay. Thank you. Do you love the background, Angie? Thank you. Yeah, the wallpaper was like a last literal, not literal last minute decision, like last day decision, meaning I put it up today on my lunch break, as well as the drapes. So I have no idea what's going to be going on with this wall back here. I haven't finished decorating it yet. I don't know if I'm going to keep the same stuff. I need something that reflects me well. And I think so far the drapes and the wallpaper are getting there, but we'll see about whatever shelves or things that I put up. Oh no. I was just joking with my mom this weekend that I choke on my own saliva like every day, and it just happened on live within the first 2 minutes. Excuse me. I'm excited to be here with you guys. You may have noticed from the title mentions that that Savannah's still loud, that this is a just chatting podcast. So I do have a topic and we can absolutely talk about this. I have thoughts on it. I think most people have thoughts on the Johnny Depp and Amber Heard trial, which is, I believe, on break this week, but I think they're 4 weeks in to the 6-week trial. That's interesting. There's a lot going on there. There's a lot to be said about that. But for anybody who's just joining or who's watching in the replay, if you're expecting a very structured podcast, analyzing this, I would recommend go watch Emily D. Baker, because that's not this podcast. I have been out for the past 2 or 3 weeks, something like that. If you didn't know, I was going through a move, which is why things look different. So I was going through a move, and then let me tell you what happened. So I've been gone for a couple weeks. I the whole move process is in and of itself was one of the most stressful. I definitely think it was the hardest thing Jake and I have had to do together, because we were in the process of purchasing a house, but we didn't know at any point throughout that process whether or not that would actually pan out. It was always kind of like hanging in limbo, 50-50. This may or may not work out, until like the literal last day. And it got to a point where essentially we couldn't close. Like there were too many issues on both sides, to where we kept having to push the closing date back. And then it got to the point where where we were staying before, my apartment that I moved into when I first moved to Savannah, they were not going to allow us to stay any longer. Like, we had way overstayed our welcome just with the house purchase process kind of like taking longer than expected. So it got to a point where they were like, you got to get your stuff out. We're going to do your walkthrough like in 24 hours, blah, blah, blah. So we essentially had to make a game time decision, and we ended up renting. We got a rental that was actually one of my top choices, in terms of, because like I said, since I knew that it was like a 50-50 thing, I wasn't while I was shopping for houses to buy, I was also looking at rentals as well. And so we were very lucky in that at first, with this top choice rental that I had, um at very first, Jake didn't think he was going to like it because of something in the video. So I got to make sure that I don't dox myself. Um and then when we revisited it, I showed him the neighborhood and everything, he loved it. So I called to see, like, if I could apply for the apartment, or it's a house actually, if I could apply for the house, and that moving fairly quickly on it, which I've worked in property management before. It's every once in a while, you have somebody that's gotta move, like, right away, like, they come into town and they need a place, like, now, and their U-Haul is, like, outside. So at first, when I told them, like, "Hey, I'm looking to apply for a house, I really like this one, and I'm gonna wanna move right away," um, like, in the next day. They were like, "Well, it hasn't been cleaned, so it's not gonna be ready for a couple of days." And I was like, "Well, we'll forego the cleaning. That's not an issue. We would just like to know if we can get started on the application process." And they were like, "Nope, it's gonna take a few days." So then Jake and I, we spent the afternoon, like, looking at various apartments in the area, and we were like, "Oh, shit is bleak." Ugh, in our price range, even at the very top of, like, us maxing out our budget to where we would be, like, stretching it every month, we still like, we could have gotten a really nice place, but we would still have to downsize, and that was an issue. So, yeah, it was looking real bleak. We were going way out driving way out into the boonies, still not looking at anything great out there, and then neither of us wanted to live far outside of the city. So, I called again about this house, and I was like, "Hey, just wanted to check in again, hoping that I was gonna get somebody different, and I didn't." And she was just honest with me, and she was like, "The reason that we said no was because it's usually a red flag when somebody is in a dire situation and they need to move next day." And I was like, "Oh, that makes sense. Yes, I know what you mean, but it's not what it looks like." And so I was like, "I'm happy to explain our situation to you. Like, we have spotless rental histories, both of us do. Like, we're not getting evicted or anything like that. The owners are just selling the apartment that we're in, and, our house purchase process is not going in a timely fashion." So, I was like I said, great rental history, we'd be looking to live somewhere where long term, we'll sign a longer term lease, da 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 da. So then they were able to get it ready, and we applied and hit the submit button at like 4:59 p.m. that day. And so I was like, dang it. They are not going to get back to us today. So they got back to us the next morning to let us know that we were approved and they were going to be writing up the lease. And so we actually got approved and signed a lease the day that we had to, like, also get moving help over to the other apartment and start moving right away. And so it was hell on our bodies, on my nerves up until that moment for Jake too. It was still hell on our nerves during the process, but, like, realizing that, oh my god, like, moving gets so much harder in your late 30s, mid to late 30s. It's not like being in college where, you get a couple friends and you buy a pizza and some beer and everybody just moves and you still have energy that night to start putting everything away. No, 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 no. It was hell. It was so difficult. I think I cried a couple of times. Our bodies were hurting so much. Um, the elevator in our building broke down a couple of times while we were trying to move, and then we had to at one point, I was just like, "Jake, we're not going to get this done, tonight." Like, we pushed our move out inspection to the next morning at 11, so I was like, "Listen, we'll get up in the morning, and we'll move the rest of it in the morning, we'll just do it." So we did, we got everything moved over here. It's a two-story house, so everything we just had jammed in the first floor, and so that made me quite anxious because there was no navigating the space down there. There was no getting to any box or any piece of furniture with as much as everything was jam-packed down there, and it's also scary to see all of your stuff, like, filling up a space and being like, "How is my furniture gonna fit in here?" Of course, like, I was worried, but, things needed to be moved upstairs in order to really see how it was gonna lay out, but we needed probably at least 2 days for our bodies just to recover, and that sucked because I'm the kind of person who, like, I wanna get moved in right away, like, I wanna start, like, puttering around, and I sa I said on Instagram that I was nesting, and then somebody was like, "Oh my gosh, you're nesting? Like, baby?" And I was like I said to my mom and Jake, "Wait a minute, does nesting always mean that you're, like, pregnant?" My mom was like, "Generally, people think that." I go, "Oh, let's change how I worded this on Instagram and Facebook." But nesting without children. Empty nesting is one of my favorite things to do. Decorating is like my favorite thing to do. Literally could not those first couple days we were here, and Jake was just like, "Babe, you've got to just like lay in bed and let your body rest. Just turn on some Netflix. We'll watch Encanto a few times. Like just relax and let your body kind of heal from the move." So we did that, and then so that was like what? That was like we moved on Wednesday, rested Thursday, Friday. Saturday, we were able to start moving things kind of around, and we got a grill and we had our friend over for, dinner, and that night when we were grilling out, I started to cough, and I didn't think much of it, but I was just like, "I'm not feeling that great, guys. I'm gonna go take a shower, see if I feel better." Then I got out of the shower, I was like, "Don't feel much better, guys. Gotta go to bed." And the next day, my body was just down for the count. And, Jake had some COVID tests, some at-home tests, and, we both took them, and he was like, "You, ma'am, are COVID positive." So, just for the record, we did check in with our here and there. Ooh, for the record, because we're moving, connection might be a little unstable. I do have a power line adapter that will probably help my connection up here, kinda get it stable, but, yeah, that I don't have set up just yet. I don't even have my nails done. I'm not there yet. We're still in a transitional period, but yeah, I was out for about a week with COVID, and then after that, like, started testing negative, thinking that I was gonna feel better. A lot any of you guys who have had it, you're probably like, "No, you don't feel better," like, once you're, like, not contagious, or even once those primary, like, symptoms go away, I was still feeling like crap, like, every day or every other day. Like, some days I would have energy to do things, but a lot of days I would be just, like, super fatigued. And so that was really frustrating because, again, I just wanna get to putting my house together. And we finally started to get things kind of put away, and my mom came to visit for Mother's Day weekend, and so here we are today, Tuesday after Mother's Day weekend, and I am just now catching up with all y'all. Patrons, you and I caught up a little bit, on Thursday of last week. So that's what's been going on the past few weeks with me. I'll have to remember to post this on Patreon, but just for patrons as well, just so you know, I have something going on Thursday evening. So I am happy to reschedule our Patreon live to Friday night. Let's see. Stephanie says, Helen, anti-water came, but you still did it. Congratulations on the move. Thank you. Um, yeah. Elise says, "Well, we broke down several times when we moved this year." Oh, I believe it. I'm sorry. Um, Mona Lisa Lemon, would I ever consider talking about what's going on with potential repeal of Roe v. Wade? What's going on with SCOTUS? Um, and the repercussions associated with that. I don't have anything against sharing my thoughts. I just don't think that I have anything particularly unique to say about it. Um, and I admittedly have not been keeping up with the news, so I don't know exactly where that stands. Um, it's unsettling. It's unsettling is the most I can say, because I've already got so much going on in my life, and I'm just trying to get to will we ever talk about the topic that I put on this thumbnail? I'm not sure, but who cares? I already said it's a chatting pod. Um, but yeah, the reason that I put the title as the Johnny Depp and Amber Heard case is because that's the only thing that I've, like, somewhat been able to keep up with during all of this. Like, excuse me, here I go again. Learn how to live and just be a normal person. Um, we come for the topic and stay for the chat. Yay. The chat is pretty good. Um, so yeah, here we are. Here we are. Yeah, the only thing that I have been keeping up with, and not even like perfectly linearly. Sometimes, like, I'll miss a day and then I'll go back and watch it, and so I'm pretty sure I've watched almost all of the trial so far, but who knows? Like, every day I'm just watching bits and pieces over again, and I'm just like, "Oh, I don't remember seeing that part." Um, but at the same time, it's one of those topics where I have to, and I was talking to my mom about this, you have to take breaks from that too. Like, I can't imagine what it's like for any of the people involved in the case right now, but just watching it on a daily basis, and, like, I'm sure it's well, Emily D. Baker, she is a lawyer, so, I'm sure that her threshold for this sort of stuff is higher than your average person. But still, it's something that at least I realize, like, I need a breather from this. Like, and I was saying before I cut myself off, that I was in such a high state of stress prior to the move and during the move that I'm trying to, like, get myself back to just, like, feeling at ease, like, feeling like not feeling like the sky's falling. You ever get that feeling where it's like everything is fine, so you start to worry about what you're not worrying about? Like, "Oh, there's something that I should be worried about." Like, or just like that my power bill here is not gonna be like $1,000 a month, and then, like, how am I going to afford that? Like, just little things like that, and I had to have a moment where, I talked to other people about, like, what they were going through, and I'm like, "Really, I need to recognize that I get anxious because that is just who I am, and it's not because of my circumstances. My circumstances are fine. It's just how I tend to sue and get spun out on things." And so, I've been working on that a little bit. So, um, Elise says, "Yeah, that stuff can be super draining to watch, especially if you can relate to what's being discussed." Rosie says all the time, "Just little anxiety things." Yep. Um, yeah, so where do we start with that case? And it's difficult because I do have a lot of thoughts on it. However, the thing I wouldn't say that everything that I've seen online is super polarized. I don't think that this is a situation where I'm gonna be careful choosing my words and speak only about how I feel, but I don't think this is a situation where I can think in a very polarized manner on this. Um, Everywhere that I look online, public opinion seems to be very much in favor of Johnny Depp. Perhaps I'm just in certain parts of the internet, and I know there's a whole other side of the internet that sides with Amber Heard. I admittedly am definitely on the side that is pro Johnny Depp. However, and this is the part that, like, I might upset people with, but, like, I've noticed throughout watching this trial that while I'm not ashamed, or, I don't take back my support for, Johnny Depp's side of this, but I have to keep myself in check and recognize, like, okay, well, definitely a lot of the thoughts I'm having while I'm watching this case are biased. I'm absolutely biased. And there's like, if I can just say, like, the truest thing that I've learned about this relationship from, like, hearing people talk about it is just that this shit was so toxic on both sides. I can say that with pretty much with a good deal of confidence. Is that it was at the very least very toxic on both sides. And so, it's difficult when you're like, "Okay, well, I I side with this one side for these particular reasons," but not it's really hard to also recognize that that side has faults too. And that's where I am with this. Um Elise says, "Well, I think Depp's side has been better. It's sick to see the disgusting sexist comments, coming out against Amber's side." I'm curious as what specifically you mean so I can speak to those, 'cause there are certain sexist, like, remarks that I've noticed that I've wanted to speak about, but that's more that's, like, more obscure in my, like, repertoire of of opinions, and so, but I definitely have some thoughts. Um, but Stephanie says it seems only abusive on one side, justice for Johnny. See, that's so hard for me to tell, and I will say, admittedly, for me, keep this in mind about me and how I may differ from you. I have a really hard time sussing out when someone is, or assuming that, or discerning if somebody might be lying. I have a really hard time with that. So when it comes to like a lot of I will rely on things that are inconsistent. I will rely on if like somebody says one thing but then the evidence shows something else, then I'll be like, well, that doesn't make sense. Make sense of that, or else I assume you're lying. But if somebody is just saying, you know, he hit me, it's my brain doesn't automatically go, "Mhm, mhm, yeah, right." But I do rely on a little bit I am trying to lean a little bit more on other people's kind of reads on these situations. So I like admittedly, I mentioned, like, watching Emily D. Baker. So, she is an expert. Do I think that she's biased? Absolutely. I think all human beings are biased, and anybody who's got is going to be biased in a sense. But she is an expert, and she is somebody who can say, like, this testimony sounds different from any other testimony I've ever heard from somebody who claims to be a victim of DV, as an example. So when I hear that, I go, "Oh, okay, so now I see it." So now, like, I see, and typically those comments are made directed towards Amber Heard. Kind of the way that she tells her story. A couple of the things Emily points out is, like, oftentimes when people are describing these situations of being hurt, I'm trying to use my language carefully, you understand, but they typically describe the sensations that, like, the bodily sensations that they feel, whereas Amber is describing things like like he his boot. He was wearing, like, I could see his boots and I could hear his boots, and the carpet was so dirty. Like, she was describing other parts of, like, the setting. I do find it odd oftentimes when she's giving testimony, just kind of like the her pacing and the way she contorts her face and stuff like that. Doesn't seem like how I would speak in those moments. Um, I don't know, but then when I see a person getting very emotional and crying and things like that, I tend to believe that that's real. So that part is hard for me, admittedly. Um, mm, Londoner says, "I think the problem is misogynists and abusers are jumping on the case as if it proves all claims of abuse." As it disproves, yeah, that's something to definitely keep in check. Janina says, "My sympathy towards Amber flew out the window when she started making those horrible stories, using shit that people have gone through. I still think Johnny can be very toxic with his behavior." Yeah, so let me be what I have decided I truly genuinely feel about Johnny Depp's behavior is there are a few things. The way that he assaults couches and furniture, and, like, that's kind of the way that he's described it, like, slamming cabinets and doors and throwing things, or even, like, dipping his paint and or dipping his chopped off finger and paint and paint thinner and writing all over the walls, stuff like that. That sort of behavior, to me, I don't I would probably, if it were happening to me, so I have to imagine, you know, times that I have experienced something most similar to that, and it's just, to me, I'm embarrassed for him when I see that, especially to see a grown man who has, and I don't care, like, if you say, like, "Oh, this is coming for his abilities as a father," no, like, or it's ageist, it's none of those things. When you get to a point, you start to grow up, and I'm at a point right now where I was even telling my mom, like, Jake and I know where we are in terms of, like, growing up, we know that we have more growing up to do. And some of these ways of fighting just look like if you told me that these people were 20 and 22 years old, I'd be like, "Yeah, we knew those people who used to throw shit and, like, punch walls and, slam cabinets." But you eventually have to get to a point where you learn to grow up, especially if you're going to be getting married and bringing children into the world and just dealing with other people, just dealing with other people's feelings, like, impacting each other, and so that just looking at him in a vacuum, not him and not having any not really thinking much about Amber Heard, I find his behavior to be very unhealthy, very toxic, at the very least, abusive at worst. Um, and there are a couple things, like, well, one of the things that I think was kind of bullshit that they brought up in the trial was, um, kind of the really disgusting things that he said to his friends, like, like, making references to the Salem witch trials and saying, like, "Let's burn her, let's drown her." That slippery hoe, that I donated my like, he's just used such, like, colorful language to describe her, and while that kind of language is pretty disgusting, I personally don't believe that that should be held against anyone. Like, what you're saying to your friend, and particularly somebody who's been abusive towards you and your ex that has, allegedly chopped off your damn finger, like, I would not hold that against anyone, what they say in private to someone else. If he said it to her, that's one thing, but he said it to his friend. So, like, that's not something that's one side of this case that, like, that I felt like people have been, like, unjustly, harsh on him for. What I don't think I've heard people be harsh enough about are the times that you hear in these recordings that he'll, like, call her a fat ass, things like that. Like, I have been in a relationship where I've been called fatty in a moment, just to get at me because my partner was mad at me. I have been in situations of DV, and I don't talk about it much, and, the person who, was involved in that with me is no longer with us, and it's very complicated because we ended up becoming friends, and so I never really cared to really, like, make people make a decision about him one way or another because of that. But then I've also been in other relationships. I can think of another relationship in particular where the guy never put his hands on me, but his anger was so explosive, and I do think that there is some validity to the argument that, when you bear with me here for a moment and let me get through this entire thought. But, in terms of, like, being in a relationship with somebody who is bigger than you, stronger than you, and then they are, having these big outward displays of anger, that can be very scary. That can be very scary, and I've been in those situations before. I've even told I was recently telling Jake about this, that the guy that I was just thinking about that, like, was very angry, would get very angry, like, very touch and go. I had a sew like, I was in, fashion design school at the time, and I was sewing a lot, and there was, like, a sewing pin on the floor, and he stepped on one of them, and that became so explosive that I had to lock myself in the bathroom and call my brother or call his brother. So, like, that's not nothing. That's not nothing when somebody behaves in that way. Do wanna talk a little bit about the possessiveness and kind of, alleged possessiveness and, um, kind of remarks about Amber Heard's career and all that. I'm interested in some of that too. But that said, when it comes down to it, Amber Heard made claims by implication about Johnny Depp where it seems to me that she was the perpetrator, she was the instigator, she was the person doing those things. So I do believe if you were to take me out of this and ask me if I were just to make a decision right now, what do I think happened in this relationship based on what I've heard? I will say I don't know that I believe that Johnny Depp ever laid a hand on Amber Heard. I can't say that I feel confident that he never did. I talked to my mom. She was like, "No, I think they both did." So, and I think that's fair. I think it's fair for people who to have these different takeaways from this because we heard all of this, right? We heard things contradicting statements. Um, but I definitely believe, like, there are a lot of things that just seem really inconsistent, that make me second guess the claims that he ever may have laid a hand on her. So, a lot of the things that other people are asking too. It's like you have all these recordings of like, him Johnny, losing his temper at a set of cabinets, and you have, pictures of things that he wrote on the walls and stuff like that, but you somehow don't have any proof that he physically hurt you, right? But then, then the pictures that she's taken of like bruising on her arms and face come up, but then you also hear that like I still don't know what the deal is with the makeup palette. I would love to hear what that's about. Um, then you also hear people saying that, the bruising that she has shown on her face is consistent with the kind of bruising that comes with the botched cheek fillers that she may have. And then on top of all that, I do believe Johnny Depp when he talks about how, in that one instance where they were going back and forth through the bathroom door, and then she said, "Oh, you broke my broke my nose," and then, showed him these tissues that were colored red. Then he goes and finds them and smells them and says that they smelled like nail polish. I believe that. And so, like, although I do have trouble just intuiting that somebody could be lying straight to my face, if somebody has proved to be a liar, I can override that in my mind, and I can go, "Okay, well, I can't trust anything you said," especially if it's a boy or girl who cried wolf situation, and Amber Heard has absolutely been the girl who's cried wolf, and that is the part that makes me go, "Okay, so if you lied about this instance, how do I know that you're being honest about any of these?" And that is really unfortunate for all people who are involved in situations of allegations of DV, because it's then you wonder, like, you it does a disservice to actual victims, and even if and when I say actual victims, if she is an actual victim, it's doing a disservice to herself when you lie in those moments, because it takes credibility away from yourself, and it makes people question other victims. So, um, yeah, these moments where we've caught her in lies, or Johnny's caught her in lies, or, a couple of things too is that you see, one thing, like, again, where I'm primarily watching this trial is via Emily D. Baker, so bear in mind that my my assessment of this is coming through a filter that is Emily, who I do find to be, a very credible and source. But, what she observes is that, the testimony on Johnny's side seems to be very consistent. Everything that he says seems to be consistent with everything else that he said, and then everything that each of their witnesses say seems to be consistent with everything else that's been said on that side. And so I do rely on things like that, especially with the opinions of professionals, to say, "Okay, well, then that is what I'm gonna rely on to determine what I feel about who's telling the truth here." Um, and there was just, oh man, I saw right when they finished Johnny's side of the case, and then they brought up the first witness was that psychologist, I believe it was, Dr. Hughes, and she just and, like, I told Jake, I was like, "No pun intended, I promise you, but this, like, their first witness is shitting the bed so bad, so bad." Um, it's just what a mess. And then, like, other things too, like that doctor who it pissed me off so much because aside from, if you didn't know, like, they had this doctor who was testifying on behalf of, as an expert witness for Amber Heard, talking about, it was described as, it was abbreviated as IPV, intimate partner violence, by Johnny is what the document was called, and it was this report, and so much of this report, like, it was forms, and they had, blocks that say, like, "Please describe the incident, what happened?" And then on the side, it's like, "How often does this, make the victim feel stressed," or blah, blah, blah. So, like, she'll circle the answers on the side, but then where it says, "Describe the incident," there's nothing there. And I don't care, like, they kept asking this doctor, like, "Why didn't you fill that out?" And she's like, "Well, if you go through my notes, then you'll find," but I don't care, like, to me, that's not a justification. You have a form, and in my opinion, I am no professional, obviously, but this is not optional. If it asks you a question, if you're writing an IPV report on Johnny Depp, you don't get to just skip parts of it and say, "Oh, well, that's in my notes." Well, fucking go back and extract from your notes what you need to and write it in that form. There was a couple of other parts too is where, like, what I didn't believe, where it looked like, an intimate partner inventory kind of, and there were, like, 6-ish names listed, and it was like, so and so from, 18 to 19, so and so from, 19 to 20, so and so from 23 to 26, whatever. And it was like, past partners. And so it was like this person, this person, this person, Johnny Depp, James Franco, Elon Musk. And this was such bullshit where they were like, okay, well, you mentioned James Franco here under intimate partners. And the doctor was like, well, I drew a line and I listed him on the other side of that line, which is still on this form in that box of intimate partners. But she made another column. She's like, that's a line. He is not necessarily an intimate partner. It's just that that was accused by Johnny Depp. And so that came into question here on this document. And then the notes on James Franco were like, um, close friend close friend, but she wanted to be with Johnny ultimately. It's like, that doesn't make sense. I have plenty of friends where it's like, I don't talk about my friend Christina and be like, "She's my close friend, but ultimately I wanna be with Jake." Something's missing there. If there is, "But I want to be with my partner," what's going on with that friend? That's not how you talk about friends. There's no, "But I wanna be with my partner," unless there's more to it, like, "But I wanna be with my partner doesn't approve of this friendship," right? Something like that. But, yeah, it's one thing where they talk about Elon Musk, because Elon Musk was apparently after, they were separated, then if she decided that she eventually decided that she wanted to be with Johnny Depp again, then I'd be like, "Fine," at least it's very honest here that she decided to go be with somebody at a time where, they weren't together, and then she changed her mind. But that's kinda how it was worded with the James Franco situation, but she was very much with Johnny Depp during the James Franco situation, and then we saw that elevator footage. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, there's essentially this elevator video where, Amber Heard gets in, an elevator from the penthouse level of this building, so I presume that it's one of the buildings where they have the penthouses, and, she goes down to a certain floor where it looks like James Franco was, like, parked because it wasn't, like, the lobby, and then she, like, got him, and then they went up the elevator, and then she's, like, putting her head on his shoulder, and he's got a backpack, so it looks very much like he's, like, staying the night. And so, like, again, so when I have a hard time just, like, looking at somebody and being like, "Liar, liar, pants on fire," just based on you telling me things. But if I see certain facts, proof, evidence, etcetera, that points to something else, then that's when I'm like, "Okay, I don't believe you. I don't believe you that James Franco is just a close friend." I've just been chatting and chatting and chatting and not looking at what my peoples are saying. Hey, there's 50, 56, 55 of you here. Hey, If you wouldn't mind taking a moment to like the, stream to invite me back, that'd be awesome. Um, oh, yeah, I see, Rachel, where you're talking to Elise and says she even dared him to tell the world that a man is a victim of abuse and see who believes him. Oh, if that's what you guys mean when I mean, there's sexism on both sides of this. Yeah, that part is really frustrating because how much do we, especially, um, Amber Heard coming out and trying to grandstand as this model feminist and so woke. It's like, well, how much do we in these progressive conversations talk about toxic masculinity and talk about how the stigmas around men and whether or not they're able to be vulnerable, able to be victims, able to express these things. It's so difficult. It's so difficult for men, and so, for her to just be like, "You're such a baby, you're such a baby, why don't you go tell the world that you, a man, are a victim too?" It's like, what do you stand for? I just I realize, like, things that I've heard before is that, like, the way that people present themselves. Especially those I'm not speaking about all advocates and activists, but a lot of times I've heard another public figure talk about how often certain people who grandstand as activists actually think, behave, speak entirely differently when behind closed doors. Londoner, the evidence she was kicked to the floor on the plane is audio of Depp sounding extremely sick and, writhing in pain again, just doesn't seem to and completely, it to me, that read is solely there to humiliate this man. I believe that and here's the thing, one thing that I haven't heard really anybody say, but I was trying to figure out if perhaps there was just something I wasn't quite understanding about this trial and what they're trying to prove, and I think they're excuse me. I think, Heard's side wants to make the argument that Johnny was so intoxicated so much of the time that he wouldn't recall the abuse that he laid on her, right? I think that's what they're getting at. But boy, oh boy, does this sound like a lot of shitty, shitty addiction stigma. Because I remember at the beginning of this trial, I got so frustrated with how much it seemed Johnny Depp had to try to defend himself against claims that he was on certain substances. It got to a point where I just wanted to go in there and just be like, "Okay, he was on these substances. He's struggled with alcohol and drugs. Yes. So what? What are you trying to say? Are you trying to say that I know you're trying to say that he wouldn't recall, but it sounds to me like you're saying that because he is an addict, he is an abuser. And that's just not fact. That's not how that works. Of course, I did a whole like euphoria analysis where I said, addicts in active addiction can be very, very cruel, especially when it means getting to their drug of choice. They can be is the key words there is they can be very cruel. We can act very out of character, but in these situations, they're not even describing I haven't even not that I picked up on. It doesn't even seem like they're describing situations where Amber Heard is, like, keeping his drugs and alcohol away from him, and he's trying to get to them. That's really the only times I'm not saying it's the only time that this can happen, but those are really the only times that I've witnessed addicts and active addictions behaving in cruel ways. Again, it's not to say that's the only no, the addict who, committed DV on me was not trying to get to anything, but he was unleashing, I guess, a lot of pent-up anger. But in most cases, when I do see addicts acting in very cruel ways, oftentimes it there's a link to, like, a person who's standing in the way, of getting to their drug of choice. Um, Again, not an expert. Don't take any of this as gospel, obviously. But um, yeah, where I don't remember where I was going with that thought, but it just seemed like it would like that recording was meant to humiliate Johnny and just kind of like at best to say like what does it serve her side is maybe just to be like, see, he's just a pathetic junkie. He's a pathetic junkie. Listen to this pathetic junkie writhing in pain and throwing up. And it doesn't at the end of the day, what does that prove about your case? It really doesn't prove anything. It really doesn't. So, it certainly doesn't prove anything about being kicked in the back. Like, that's I think if you're going to try to make that argument, I think you need to bring in some a apparently there were witnesses, right? Why don't you have a witness there to talk about what they saw? But no, you have a recording of him, like, writhing in pain and writhing and retching, like, get out of here with that mess. Um, Historically, people have never believed the victim unless there was a radically motivated reason, says Elise B. So believing victims is new, and ultimately, I appreciate the sentiment. Um, yeah, it's really, I'm really interested to see. I said in the title, is it, I'm wondering if this kind of like hashtag men too, is this going to create a wave? I almost want to say a post Me Too wave, but I don't think it's hashtag men too. And that's kind of a play on Me Too, but they're really, those two are not two sides of a coin. Really, I think the two sides of that coin are hashtag men too and women. And so, of course, I think it's pretty natural that we understand that the language probably needs to shift to believe all victims. And also, I've heard some people say, we need to kind of make sure that we're resting in a default state of believing people when they say these things have happened to them. And then as, more information comes about, you can change your opinion on that. And that's a little bit touchy because some people, I mean, like, look at the conversations we've had in just the 2.5 years that I've been here on YouTube. I remember being parts of conversations where it's like, no, we don't question. We do not question a woman or slash a victim says happened to them. We don't do it at all. You know how many times, and I'm not saying what's right or wrong or whether or not this should change. I'm just facilitating a conversation where you guys can tell me what you think. I'm kind of just, I don't know. I don't know. Where do we go from here? Like another one of the claims too is that there's like that he essayed her and stuff like that. So, I remember days where we would be like, if somebody says that they were essayed, you do not question it, not at all. But do we question it in this case? What does this mean about believe all women and Me Too? I think that those movements definitely served good purposes in kind of the general conversation that we were having publicly about these things, is that certain things needed to be kind of shoved down our throats a little bit, so that we could learn to reframe how we look at, because oftentimes, especially me, like, I'm 36 years old. I grew up at a time where, like, when if things happened to a girl, especially if she was intoxicated or something like that, there was a lot of language like, "She's asking for it," even in the time that I've grown up. So, of course, I think that, like, these movements served a purpose in that, in learning that, like, we need to stop, vilifying victims as an example for the things that have happened to them. But it was kind of radicalized, those movements, to where, we do not question people who claim to be victims. So that what I've wondered is, does that mean that we are going to start taking a more nuanced approach where we start introducing the concept that men can be victims too and that women can lie too? Because surely we don't believe that Amber Heard is the only woman that could lie, right? Ugh, like, that I'm afraid that's gonna get me in trouble, but, one of the things that kind of keeps like, bouncing around in my head too is that and again, I am not making any statements about what I believe, these are just things that I'm questioning now. So one thing too is that, at that time when we said believe all women, believe everybody who claims that they've been a victim, don't ever question it, you know, some people would argue, yeah, but I know somebody who, somebody who's important to me had somebody claim that he did these things that he never did and it ruined his life. And I remember reciting the script or my friends around me reciting the script. Yes, but it's been proved or shown that only 3% of reports are false and blah, blah, blah. And then but then that figure, 3%, it's like, is that low is that low enough of a number to where we don't discern at all? Um, because we use the figure 4%. We often God bless those of you who can keep up with my brain in the different directions that it goes. Like, seriously, thank you. Thank you, thank you. And to those who don't can't keep up with where I'm going, I understand and I apologize. But another statistic that was, like, popping out of my brain was, remember a couple years ago when we became kind of obsessed with sociopaths, and it became the thing to refer to people as sociopaths, and to wonder if somebody's is Logan Paul a sociopath? Is Jake Paul a sociopath? Is so and so a sociopath? Or if you really, like, didn't like somebody, I don't I don't condone this, but, like, calling people sociopaths because you don't like them. And one of the statistics that we threw around was like, well, 4% of the population is. I think either sociopaths or narcissists. I think it's sociopaths. And they're like, that's 1 in 25 people. That's not that low of a number. So it's not that crazy for us to assume that somebody could be one of the 4%. It's like, okay, so it's not that crazy to assume that somebody's 4% here, but we will shame you. And again, I was part of the crowd shaming people, and I don't know what to believe now, but we will shame you for assuming somebody's part of this 3%. I just hmm, I don't know. Elizabeth Turner, am I going to say the words narcissistic abuser? Definitely thought those words for a minute. Um, Curiosity says even at 3%, a believe all statement movement is flawed immediately. I agree only in that, and hear me out. I generally don't believe in anything that is completely radicalized, absolute, polarized. I've always argued for this, and now more than ever argued for a nuanced approach to just about anything, and especially when you're talking about two people making accusations against each other and these things ruining people's lives on either side, or possibly, or in some cases both. Um, yeah. Um Shelby says, I think the average Joe should probably not question someone on their essay, but if there's evidence the essay didn't happen, it would be okay for the proper channels to question what happened. I agree. But the question comes about is, how do you go from do not question someone on their essay, then how does evidence come about? You know? I think I hear what you're saying is that, like, if evidence comes out because, like, by the person who's being accused, they present something, or just a recording, or something like that, leaked text drops into our laps, then we have reason to question it. I agree with that. But if somebody said, I was essayed, full stop, that we have no reason, I think, to I agree, if this is what you're saying, that there's no reason to be like, oh yeah, prove it. It's like, no, 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 that's not how this works. um Londoner says JD hasn't been arrested for any of these alleged crimes. So again, the veracity has been looked at, and clearly the Amber Heard allegations haven't automatically taken as factual. that brings up another point too, is that when again, like I said, I have a hard time just feeling in my bones that somebody's lying, but bearing in mind, looking at people's track record, that's something that I absolutely pay attention to, and, you look at every single person who has spoken on what they've witnessed in his previous relationships, nobody has witnessed any sort of DV nobody has witnessed him laying his hands on a partner. Though he has been known to have these big, like, outward displays of anger on objects, right? Whereas Amber Heard has been was she convicted? I know she was charged. She had a DV charge against her in a previous relationship, I think her ex-wife. So, again, track records and, patterns of behavior is very important, and this is a situation where that will come into play into whether or not I'm going to believe that somebody's telling the truth. Um, let's see. She has a track record of this stuff. Um, so the other thing too is I was curious as to what um, people in my audience I was rewatching yesterday, last night, when Dr. Curry was on the stand and talking about how she assessed Amber with and diagnosed her with BPD, and then went on to describe not only BPD but histrionic disorder. I think that's just what it's called, histrionic disorder. And kind of described how the signs and behaviors of people with these disorders, how that comes into play and how that would come into play, like, in these situations. I'm wondering, like, for the people in my audience that do have BPD, does that when you hear that, do you feel vilified? Do you feel singled out? Do you feel stigmatized? Or do you go, "Oh, yeah, absolutely. I do see those things. I know these things firsthand, and this is true." Like, or is it a mixture of both? Because I can only really speak on, like, the addiction piece, and, um, like I said, like, there are parts where it's like, yes, you can be cruel as an addict in these moments, especially when you're highly intoxicated or something's in between you and your fix. But I also don't think that it should be spoken in absolutes, and I don't think that somebody should be shamed for having had these struggles, even if they are currently struggling. Also, I think I got bitten by a mosquito here, and it's all like swollen on the side of my face. Um, Logan says, "What we also need to figure out is the balance between believing all victims, but also treating someone as innocent until proven guilty," which is part of what this case is about, and it's part of what this country is founded on, right? Like, the in terms of the justice system, of course, we know it's broken, but we are presumed innocent until guilty. It's how things are supposed to be, but that can't be the case. That can't be the case, um, in situations where people are that can't always be the case in situations where people are accused of things like this. So, how do we find that balance? And every time I want to have a conversation about balance is when there's a lot of disagreement, because when you're talking about balance, it means having a little of this and a little of that. And that's going to be different for everyone. We talk about the Myers-Briggs. If you know your Myers-Briggs type, if you are if your letters end in P, if you're a perceiver, versus J, a judger, if you're a perceiver, you're gonna be more on the side of giving people the benefit of the doubt. Whether that means you give Amber Heard the benefit of the doubt or Johnny Depp the benefit of the doubt, I don't know, but you are more likely to believe in the concept of mercy and gray areas and believing in giving people the benefit of the doubt generally. Whereas judges are more likely to be decisive and be like, "Nope, this is how it is, this is right, this is wrong, and something needs to be done about it." And I'm generally fall on the judger's side, but I do have I'm somewhat balanced. I have tested as a perceiver before, but I know that for me, I am pretty decisive and I believe in fairness. One of the things people often say about life is that life isn't fair, and I don't think that's the answer to anything because we should fight for fairness. Things should be fair. Okay, life isn't fair, but it should be. And if it's not, then you go get yours. Go make it right. Of course, in the proper channels, in the proper ways. I'm not advocating for vigilantism or anything like that. Um, but yeah, I mean, how do you approach balancing? Believe all victims, but also innocent until proven guilty. I need to take a sip. Nobody's hashtag water ganged me that I've seen. Mm, let me see. I'm trying to see if trying to pick out something to read. Curiosity says I'm in the innocent until proven guilty crowd, but with situations like DA and SA, it isn't necessary. I guess one of the good things about this trial is that there is every time there is a ruling, then, that kind of strengthens cases for others moving forward. So that is why we want to fight for what is just in this situation, is because every case lays a precedent for the cases in the future. So no one victim's case goes in vain, even if they are, wrongfully ruled against. Shelby says, I wouldn't say believing someone is jumping on the hate train of someone else. I get maybe not saying something publicly, but simply believing someone on their word isn't hating on someone else. I'm not sure if that's in response to someone else. Um, oh, I think somebody said something to that effect. Okay. Um, doo, doo, doo. We're sending love to Jen. Absolutely. Um, yeah. So I do want to note this too. Um, I I want to say forgive me, but I'm going to point out things I don't like about either side of this case. This is this Watching this case, like especially going through such stressful times in my own life, it's really interesting because sometimes, especially when dealing with like house stuff and moving and all of that, sometimes it's easy to get into the habit of thinking that having more money will solve your problems. This is nothing new. This is not groundbreaking, but that is definitely a habit that I was getting kind of stuck in, is thinking like if I had more money, then I wouldn't be so anxious right now. And then listening honestly, listening to this case, and then this weekend when we were out and about with my mom, like, my mom and I heard, like, 3 different couples, like, going at it, just, like, crazy, like, just, like, cursing at each other, screaming at each other and stuff like that, and it made me realize, well, the Johnny Depp and Amber Heard case made me realize, obviously, that, like, wow, you can have all the money in the world, and trust me, I believe that when you're making $55 million in a movie and you don't even know how much money you're making because you're making such disgusting amounts of money that all you have to do, like, you don't even need to think about the money, you just think about the work that you're doing and whether or not it's a role you wanna do, because you don't have to worry about money because you have literally 5 mansions on a cul-de-sac and 5 penthouses all in the same city, I believe, and then houses here and, like, stupid rich, and beautiful people. So you can be beautiful, beautiful, dirty, dirty, rich, rich, beautiful, beautiful, dirty, rich. And it does, obviously, like, we know this, but here it's being, like, shown for to us that that money is not gonna solve your problems. I do wonder when it comes to actors, like to artists, but especially like the kind of the Amber Heard and Johnny Depp variety. I'm wondering if like there's this need. It's again just something I'm wondering. Is there this like need to have your life imitate art? Like, are you so entrenched in the drama that is your art that you end up thinking that like, you end up, like, emulating that in your life? Like, are you bored with just, like, a normal functioning relationship? I wonder, because just, like, listening to how this relationship went down, um, I just was so grateful not to be in any of these situations, to be honest. I was just like, "Wow," like, ooh, I yeah, I would be very, very unhappy if I were either of these people, I think. Um, so it made me grateful to have kind of this, like, boring little life here with I was gonna say my husband, with my long-term boyfriend, and, like, sometimes I feel like a failure because, like, if we have a fight, which we haven't had an argument in a while, but, like, if we have a fight, I feel like, "Gosh, what a failure am I because that was, like, not the best way to communicate with each other," and da da da. But then I look at how others fight, and I'm like, "Oh my god, they really don't have, like, rule." I believe in rules. That's one thing. I believe in rules and, like, laying down ground rules for arguments because you know when you're in it, and you know that, you might do some things or that your partner might do some things you both know is not okay. I believe in ruling that stuff out and being able to call each other out on it. And it's so weird because I got the impression that Johnny and Amber have that, but that the bar is so high for what they will allow. Like, when she was saying, like, "I'm sorry that I didn't properly slap you with an open hand," I'm like, "Oh, is that allowed? Is that what you're allowed to do in this relationship? Holy shit." Because, you know yeah, you could argue which is more severe, a punch or a slap, which I don't what else is there? What's in between? Like, what are you doing that was not a slap, but not a punch? But at the same time, like, you're still inflicting physical violence upon your partner. So, do you have some sort of conception that, like, slapping is okay? Okay, Lady Gaga. Thank you, Rachel. Um Jen says, "I love that Johnny got his way and that the trial got to be public. Imagine if we didn't have the court feed." Yes. So that was another thing that I thought about all this. I do believe that he is guilty of some things. I do. But I believe him when he says that he lost nothing short of everything when Amber Heard came out with her claims that she made in 2018, and other times. But of course, here we're focusing on the 2018 op-ed. Um, I believe him that his reputation was completely lost. The two huge franchise movies that he was working on, he lost both of those. That's huge. That's huge. So again, I believe in fighting for fairness. And so in this case, even if we argue that she's just as bad as him, that they're equals, I'd like to see her suffer the same consequences, honestly. And I hate to say that because I don't like people to suffer in general, but if you're going to go out of your way to really really smear somebody's reputation when you yourself are no better, potentially worse, potentially more of the instigator, potentially more of the abuser. And, this trial has talked a good bit about how, in the legal system, of course, when it comes to the jury can decide that these two parties are mutually abusive. That's just like the court of public opinion, like we get to decide whether or not anybody's at fault more so than the other. But in the court system, as far as I understand, there's no such thing as mutual abuse. There's kind of like there can always be, I guess, assessed which side has more power, and wherever the power is imbalanced and lays in is where, that party is the one that has a potential to, I guess, to be more abusive. Um, yeah, I was gonna mention something else, but it's completely outside of what I'm talking about right now. So, oh, Janina mentioned the BPD stuff because I asked about that. Janina says, "Well, I admit BPD and relationship is hard to mix together, and then you add histrionic Johnny. I don't know why his relationships are so dramatic." Um, yeah, we heard that, his relationship with, Winona Ryder was very volatile as well, and I think that people like this just find each other, right? Doesn't that make sense? Not in every single case. Sometimes people who don't who are not like this at all end up with people who are like this, but in general, it just seems like fire met ice when it came to these 2. He's had volatile relationships, and she has been charged with the DV charge, I guess, with her from her ex-wife. So, it's not that crazy that 2 people who maybe have track records of being in toxic and volatile relationships would end up together. It's not crazy to me. Um, Elizabeth says, "Given their dynamic, I don't believe he'll win this case, and I'm guessing she won't win her counterclaim. I bet they'll both be awarded nothing, but he'll get his career back." I am kind of in that same boat. I definitely don't think that this is gonna go in her favor. Um, yeah, I think at most it'll be like a stalemate that neither of them will win. But I do just based on how much I hear public opinion in Johnny Depp's favor, I wonder if he might win. But who knows? At the end of the day, I don't think it's even necessarily about winning or losing. It's about doing the same damage to her reputation that she did to his. And at the same time, can that even be done when she is not a celebrity on the same status that he is. So really, there's not enough damage to be done to her career to equal that of his. So it will never be even. Um, Elise says, "Yeah, I don't really see people discount Depp's issues as though he never did anything toxic. Even Depp agrees he did some toxic things." Um, Janina says, "I don't think Johnny even really cares if he wins. I think he just wants to get his story out." Yes, exactly. I agree. Um, Elise also says, "I dislike unnuanced takes." Agreed. Same friend. Um, Elizabeth says, "That's what I mean. I think he played this to get the public back and thus his career while essentially exposing all of her wrongdoings." I really hope, and I'm sure it's like I am not the first person to say this, but I really hope that both of them get some really good therapy after this. Like, I hope that this is a wake-up call for the both of them. Um, and I think that for Johnny Depp, I think a lot of it has to do with and I can't speculate on somebody else's sobriety, but the story sounds like really his primary issue is just kind of the person that he becomes when he's in active addiction, because everybody describes him as such a kind and generous person when he is sober. Um, and I believe that. I do see that in him. And I will say, although I have a hard time, like I said, discerning when somebody's lying to my face, I do have a general sense of, like, somebody's character, I think, by observing them. Um, I was just talking to Logan about this. There's a concept that I call carrying the light, and there are certain people that just have just, like, just really good character, just really good, strong character, kind people to the core, and you sense that in them. Not everybody can, but, the more intuitive of us can probably sense that in others. And I don't know that I would go so far as to say that either of these parties seems to, quote, unquote, "carry the light," but I do believe the claims that he is somebody with a strong, kind, generous character when he's, sober. I believe that about him. Um, but do I see her being somebody who is also good, kind, with strong character outside of her lies? No. First of all, to me, lies are those are killer for me. Those are character killers for me. Lies are character killers. I am nothing if not honest. And when I see in these cases, like with Amber Heard, like overt lying, like, "Oh, you broke my nose, look," and then it's nail polish. I'm just like, "Wow, fuck you. Wow, fuck you." No, I don't believe, and that could be a fault of my own, that this is just like, or it's just my perception of people, but yeah, those who lie, and especially in cases like that where they lie to get ahead somehow or to disparage another person, like, I no, I don't believe that you're somebody with with a strong sense of character at all, no. Not compared to people who are at least honest, who are flawed, toxic at times, or whatever, but at least honest. And that was something I believed more so on Johnny's side when he said that, he is obsessed with the truth. If nothing else, I just care about the truth. Um, are we talking about court? I believe some of it is, a nervous laughter, coping mechanism. Um Blossom, honest is the only way to be. Yep, it's in your name, so you get it. That's funny. Um, Alice also says some of the laugh could be nervous, one, the awkwardness of some of the questions. Not even just the awkwardness of the questions, but the discomfort of the answers. So a lot of times, some of the things that Johnny Depp is saying or that they're bringing up, it's just funny. Like you just can't help it. Some of it is just hilarious. But some of it, you notice that he laughs at times where he's talking about the most traumatic things that could happen to a person. When he talks about the horrible things that his mother would say to him and the horrible things his mother would do, then talks about the horrible things that he claims that Amber Heard has said and done. He laughs. And I think that absolutely is a coping mechanism because again, it goes back to the sexism of against men. You know, the these beliefs that showing vulnerability, it makes you a baby, it makes you a wuss. And, I think kind of chuckling in these moments where you're talking about the worst possible things kinda helps to cut the tension a little bit. Mm. Elise says, "I have issues when he laughs while Amber testifies." N Not while he was on the stand. I think Shelby means this too. Oh, I'm not sure if I know which parts we're talking about then. Because when I think about him laughing, I'm thinking about when he himself is testifying, but also in certain, like, cases, like, where they had one of the security detailers, somebody who was, he has a strong accent. It was, like, Scottish or something, Irish, something like that. But when they were asking him, like, was Mr. Depp trying to urinate on the foyer, and where wasn't he strong enough to get away from you? And the guy was like, "No, no, no." And Johnny was, like, laughing at that. Like, some of those things are just funny how it comes out. Then there are certain things like talking about, like, shit on the bed and stuff like that, which I believe that it wasn't necessarily Amber herself who did it, Miss Fecal Phobia, um, but I absolutely believe that it was a human being if it was enough for multiple people to be like, "This is not something a 4-pound teacup Yorkie could do." Elizabeth, there's a reason they say many comedians use comedy to get through sensitive issues, memories, etc. Yes, I very much follow the comedy community, and one a lot of commonalities through throughout the comedy community, um, trauma, sobriety, and one way to deal with the worst of the worst situations that people have dealt with in life is to find ways to laugh about it. Really, I've always said, like, when you know, make friends and these are the settings that I know, that where you find, like, people with shared dark experiences are in the rooms of AA or in grief support groups. Like, these are situations where I've met people, made friends, and we make dark ass jokes that probably the common public would not be okay with. But it is one of the ways we learn to cope. Who the hell Stephanie, who the hell does that? "We got in a fight, so I'm going to shit on the bed." What the fuck? Yeah. Yeah. You just end up, like, somebody's gonna end up having to clean that up. It's not gonna be Johnny Depp. Um, but also seeing what little, regard and respect Amber Heard seems to have for any sort of, like, um, working class people. So, just based on kind of how they've talked about her talking to, like, wait staff and cleaners and, but yeah, somebody else other going to have to clean that up. So really, you just, like, showed your shit. You just showed everyone what your shit looks and smells like. That's embarrassing for you because even if it was your friend, Amber Heard, we assume it's you because it's on your behalf. So and also one point that Jake made where they were like, first of all, like, why is it that her friends can testify to her fecal phobia? Like, if she's in therapy, why isn't her therapist is not somebody who's gonna argue about that? But fine, your friends can testify that you have fecal phobia. Jake was like, "Well, then that isn't that more support for the argument that it would be her own and not the dog's? Because if you have fecal phobia, you really wouldn't wanna be dealing with somebody else's." It's like, "Hmm." Marissa says, "I think his snickering with her on the stand is his expression of astonishment and lack of belief. Like, he can't believe she's making these allegations. I laugh at moments like that." See, it could look bad for him in front of the jury, and so that's what I would be concerned about in terms of, like, whether or not I would, like, advise that somebody do that. But whether or not it's appropriate really comes down to whether or not the things she's saying are true or false. And the only 2 people that truly know whether these things are true or false are those 2. So, the appropriateness of it really is it's a Schrodinger's box kind of deal from our perspective. Because if she is being honest, if she is telling her earnest experiences up on the stand and he's snickering to himself, fuck you, Johnny Depp. But also, if she's going up there and making these outrageous claims against him and they're not rooted at all in any sort of sense of honesty or truth, I'd laugh at you too. I'd be like, "What the fuck? Are you kidding me? Are you fucking kidding me?" So I don't know if it's up for I don't know if it's for me to say whether or not it's appropriate. I mean, I guess it could look a certain way to other people who are watching, who could be victims, but he's a victim himself. So, yeah, what do you how do you is there really any one right way to cut that? Other than the awesome building management guy who vaped and drove away, who were y'all's favorite witnesses? I just had a couple of favorite moments where, I laughed so hard when Amber Heard's what was it, Rottenborn, when he was, reading Johnny Depp's texts, they were texting they were taking his texts a little too literally, like texts that were clearly hyperbole and treating it, like, literally. But, they were saying texting each other back and forth after their fight and saying, like, "We go for the throat because of love, because we love each other so much." And then she's like, "Well, my throat is all yours." And he says, "I have other uses for your throat that don't involve injury." And then he said reads it again, the lawyer. "I have other uses for your throat that don't involve injury." Again, "I have other uses for your throat that don't involve injury." And Johnny goes, "I'm sorry, can you repeat that? Can you read that again?" That part cracked me up. Dr. Curry was yeah, she was great. She's hot too. I don't know. I was, astonished by her beauty. Um, Blossom, in honest conversation says, "I think the jury should take all their emotions out of it because they're actors, so even if each party cried, laughed, etcetera, in my opinion, it shouldn't matter at the end of the day." Yeah, it doesn't, but at the same time, it's like it's one of those things that's I think feels like seeps into your subconscious, um, but there are a lot of people who believe that these displays of like sadness and crying and all that on Amber's end just seem odd, like not genuine. And I feel like that would probably like when something is just a little off, um, human beings detect that. So I wonder if that would read funny to the jury. If like, would they feel is she a good enough actress if she's acting? Is she a good enough actress that it moves them to feel a certain way for her? Or are they going to be put off because there's just something that a lawyer with many years of experience, but I've also watched Logan from Observe from a behavior analyst perspective, they're both saying that there are some inconsistencies in the way this woman cries on the stand. Um, Amber says this case has been so confusing and her breaking character each time Johnny's lawyer called to hearsay was funny as fuck. Um, Yeah, there was a lot of in terms of her like, especially breaking character too, like, her demeanor was just, like, all kind of all over the has been all over the place 'cause we're not done yet, right? But it's just, like, she's, like, sobbing, and then she's fine, and then she'll, like, stop and look like she's, like, trying to conjure tears. I don't wanna accuse somebody of faking it if I don't know, but, like, it's just odd. Just kind of just, like, her demeanor or affect just being all over the place. Um, what Bet Davis, I see you, hi. What I'm not a fan of is and I understand they've I think Dr. Curry talked about this being in conflict with BPD if that is what Amber has, but this argument again, like I said, if you told me that these people are 20, 22 years old, then I'd be like, "Okay, that's just how, they just need to grow up and learn how to fight fair." But, um, you know, if you're having an argument and one party needs to excuse themselves, you need to let that party excuse himself. I have been in arguments before with partners where I have felt like, "No, please, like, let's figure this out," and I have learned that, like, no, like, when you are at a heightened state and nothing productive comes of that, the only thing that you can do when you're in that heightened state to help the situation is to take some time away, is to separate so that you can calm down, come back down to normal, and then reapproach if you want to approach that topic again. And it took me until this relationship that I'm in right now with Jake to really understand that, like, yes, if somebody wants to walk away from the argument, you've gotta let them do that. And at the end of the day, whether it's the most effective for an argument or a relationship or not, you don't have the right to take somebody's freedom away from them like that and tell them that they have to sit there and stay there during a fight, especially when you guys fight like this. No, like, let if s y'all need to take some time away from each other, like, forever, we know that, but, um, that's something that kept grating on my nerves in these recordings and stuff is that So, Johnny Depp is trying to do, in my opinion, the right thing. But then, for Amber Heard, it seems that that feels like a betrayal or abandonment. And I can try to sympathize for her, but at the end of the day, she's not the one who gets to call the shots and say that he's in the wrong for that. I understand that that can be very painful for her, but that doesn't mean that she is entitled to his presence. Londoner, the jury could probably see past Heard's bizarre testimony if she supported the claims with corroborating evidence, right? It seems like she had all this evidence, right? Because she's like recording everything and all that. And then she's got testimony, and those two don't go together. Her claims do not go hand in hand with the evidence that she's provided. And the claims are so big that you would think that it's like, but you're somebody who collects evidence, who collected evidence in this relationship. So why don't you have any evidence for the big things that you're claiming? So you have video of him, slamming some cabinet, which again, I would not deal with. I would not stand for that. I would not put up with that in a relationship. I would not. No, no. I don't care if you're Johnny Depp. You're not going to be doing that in my presence. Bullshit. Fuck that. No. But like, one thing too is that, like, for one, I would be very scared probably in that situation, and one of the arguments is that she could have been very scared too, but then you see the way that she behaves, and she's, like, chuckling and smirking in the videos, and it's like, are you even really all sure, maybe your average person on the jury might feel that way in this situation, so you're able to appeal to that, but, like, it seems like you yourself don't have that reaction to somebody behaving the way that he did. So, it's just so complicated because, like, I don't agree with the way that he's behaved in this relationship, but I also don't think that she has the same reaction to these behaviors that I would. So, does it even matter how I feel? Oh, Bet Davis says the comment section under the trial videos will make you worry about humanity. Oh, goodness. I can check that out. Um Um, 013 says, "Really, someone believes her?" Some people do. There's a whole hashtag, "I stand with Amber," and of course, there's gotta be some people, right, that believe each side, but she is an actress. I mean, if we're assuming that, like, the things she's saying are not true, at the very least, she is an actress. One thing that Jake keeps saying is that he's not on her side because he just says she's just a horrible actress. He just doesn't like her as an actress. I will say this, though. I want to say this, and this is going to sound in her favor. Fuck it. It's not. It's really in the favor of women. One thing that I noticed was when they talked about their careers. First of all, there's an imbalance here because, you know, she's dating him or marrying him because he's Johnny Depp and he's got all this status, right? Seemingly. You assume that she sacrifices youth for the clout that comes along with being Johnny Depp's wife, right? Because and we know that because she's made fun of him and called him an old man, old this, old that. So she's so he's obviously somebody that's got an impressive career, and really looking at all the roles he's taken on, I'm like, yeah, he really has never seemingly had to take a shitty role. He's always had these very artful, beautiful, interesting roles. I was talking to my mom this weekend about how I used to love watching, What's Eating Gilbert Grape, um, and that was probably, like, his least impressive role, but, like, Jack Sparrow, Sweeney Todd, even though it didn't do that great, like, Alice in Wonderland, Mad Hatter, like, these are all just such interesting and artful and weirdo, cool, like, awesome, interesting roles, and what is she stuck with? He keeps saying, like, like, you're he according to her, which I believe is probably true, is that he would, like, talk about how she is not setting herself up to be a well-respected actress, that she's just allowing herself to be objectified. Bear with me. On one hand, like I said, according to Jake, she's just not a good actress, so, like, she's just not gonna get good roles, which I believe that that's probably true. I do have Rum Diary, and I have the book, but I watched the movie when I finished the book years and years and years ago, like, probably shortly after it came out, so I need to rewatch it. I find it interesting, though, that Johnny Depp I'm switching gears here, so please bear with me a little bit, where I'm going to point out something um, that I disagree with him on. Bear in mind, he where I even though I am on his side generally in this, he can be a flawed person with insecurities and possessiveness that I disagree with. And one of the things is that, telling her that she's allowing herself to be objectified and she's just being used for her body and this and that in these roles. It's like, well, look at the role you cast her in. She was just supposed to be just like the American dream, just this like beautiful, sexy person who I believe her character too was like sold into sex slavery or something like that. If I'm trying really hard to remember a book I read so long ago. Um, but you know, the other part of that too that I was talking to Jake about with this is that he obviously, like I said, he's blessed to be able to take on all these really beautiful roles, but in terms of social capital, this is something that I've heard another, film student YouTuber that I watch pointed out, was just saying that the in terms of who has the most versus the least, men have the most social capital and, young women have the least. So in terms of what is considered valuable, particularly in, like, say, entertainment, it is w whatever caters to whatever caters to men, basically, is what is considered more valuable, and whatever caters to young women is considered less valuable, and so we see that. I was telling Jake, I was like, "That's why you see, like, these action movies and stuff like that. You'll never see a movie geared towards women that has the kind of budget that the movies that are geared towards men have." So there's that, and I was like, now we are starting to see these attractive men in superhero roles, although I would argue that's, like, only, like, half of them maybe. But, something that I've always noticed growing up in entertainment is that you would see, like, in commercials too, commercials, movies, TV, you see these, like, schlubby, very average men with these supermodel women. And it's almost like they weren't fooling anyone. It was clear that media was selling this idea to men that, like, you too can, look like Kevin James and marry a Leah Remini kinda deal. You too can just be whatever average you are and have this amazing dream life, dream woman, dream life, dream this, dream that. And that being the case, again, I'm going off on a tangent that I hope people follow me on. That being the case, the film industry is always going to teeter in the direction of objectifying women. We don't like, yes, I understand Johnny Depp is really good friends with people like Tim Burton and Helena Bonham Carter, but there's only one spot in Hollywood for a Helena Bonham Carter. There are multiple openings for people like Johnny Depp, but there's only one Helena Bonham Carter. We don't need more of them. Hollywood is not asking for more of them. Hollywood is asking for more Amber Heards because we want to sell men this dream. That's really what matters. We don't care to carve out roles where women are dressed conservatively and solely solely showing their merits as actors. No, we want to see not we, but, like, the entertainment industry wants to present beautiful, sexy women. So, I don't understand where this argument was. I understand it was insecurity on his part if it was real, if this genuinely happened, which I do believe it happened, and insecurity is not rational, so there's no, like, of course, like, me being logical about it is not going to change the fact that it just was. But I don't think that you can the way that he seemed to try to, like, reason with her to try to get more respect as an actor, I just don't know that it was there. I just don't know that the opportunity was there like it is for him. Um, I'm looking through the chats. I think some of y'all are chatting with each other, so I don't know exactly what the context is. Um, the day your taste buds are blessed. What is that? Um, let me see. Let me scroll up a little bit and see what y'all were saying while I was going off. Um, mm, yeah. Oh, Bette Davis, that you made a point. Like, yeah, like she tells her mommy punched her in the face and shows a picture of a bruise on her arm, right? Make that make sense. Stephanie says her facial expressions have been bizarre in this trial. Like she is trying so hard to come across as likable or and like devastated. That's what I'm getting is like trying so hard to look more devastated. Like I would might be more likely to believe her over an hour and a half. But I still have 56 of y'all here. So thank you for being here with me. And thank you for the likes. Like y'all have been pretty nice to me. Thank you. Janina says there really is more of the shabby guy and hot girl tropes than shabby girl and hot guy tropes. Absolutely. Yeah. 100%. We still have a ways to go. We still have a ways to go in Hollywood, and I don't know if that's gonna change anytime soon. Um, yeah, CR3D brought up that, he dated Kate Moss. I really would like to know what the Kate Moss reference was, how, Amber said something on the stand, like, "Then I thought about Kate Moss," and I didn't like she implied that, like, something happened to Kate Moss or whatever, but it's like, "What? What about Kate Moss?" Like, I don't know. I don't know what happened. What happened to her? Rosie, good point. I remember all the Adam Sandler movies always had him with some fit woman like Jennifer Aniston. Yeah, let's think about it. He was with I don't know who that girl's name was. She kinda looked like Renee Zellweger in Big Daddy, Mr. Deeds, he ended up with Winona Ryder. Um, I don't know the Billy Madison and Happy Gilmore movies. I don't know those very well, but I wanna say he was with attractive women in those. Um Whereas he's just kind of this, like, yeah, this kind of, like, average schlubby guy. Mm. In the past, she said 2 people told her Alice says in the past, she said 2 people told her that Depp pushed her down the stairs. I'm not sure who she is in this sentence, but I'm assuming that, like, Amber was told that he pushed Kate down the stairs? Um, mm. Oh, Drew Barrymore a lot in his movies. I love her. I love Drew Barrymore. She's one of my favorites. Um, AH has claimed Johnny pushed Kate Moss down the stairs, but neither have publicly stated that is true. The story is just coming from Amber. Interesting. Um, Oh, interesting. It's me says, her body is betraying her words. She's making hitting, grabbing, yanking moves instead of blocking, cowering, and being pulled around when talking about the alleged physical altercations. That's an interesting observation. Um, Stephanie, just look at the news broadcaster, bunch of fat old bald white men and typically hot young women. Yeah, true. Um, Yeah. So, let me see. Have you saw the videos of compilations of all the movies Amber has quoted basically? Oh, yeah. I think some of them were a stretch. I'll probably leave it on this note because I can't think of much else that I had to I'm sure I'll think of other things that I meant to comment on. I think some of it was a bit of a stretch, but wow. The, the ripoff of the talented Mr. Ripley, I heard somewhere someone was like, "No, that's a stretch." I'm like, "Stretch? That was word for word." The way that she described Johnny saying, like, he would, would make you feel like the only person in the world, da 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 da, and then he would disappear, and it was like it was like a paragraph or 2, and it was ripped off straight from that movie. Um, and it was like I remember it gave me, like, Trump vibes when he was, like, quote word for word quoting Elle Woods. See, so Elise says, "At least from what I've seen, reports of her quoting movies were disproved." But how can that be if we heard if we heard, what they said in the opening statements and compared that to the script from The Talented Mr. Ripley? How is that possible? CR3D says, "That's because old men with money can get hot young women, the opposite is far less likely." Yes, but I think my argument is less about whether or not men like sex appeal, right? But my argument was more about the roles that they are offered in Hollywood. Like, how is she supposed to work if the only roles available to her are those of, like, sex symbol types, where he doesn't seem comfortable with her playing that type of role, um, like, would speak very, very negatively about her worth as an actor, when she would take those types of roles, but it's like, what else tell me what else is there for her, um, and for other actresses like her, like, what else is there? And it's all determined by the industry that you're a part of, Johnny, and you also have been a producer that cast her in one of those roles. Like, that whole testimony around the Rum Diary and how they met was like, "Oh, he lifted up the back of my robe, it said 'Yum,' because he saw me in the underwear that was, like, of that time period." So it's like, that part was just a bit hypocritical for me, sorry, on Johnny's side in general, but that part, I'm just like and of course, like, that part is all that is not going to does not an abuser make, and does not make somebody worthy of, like, losing this case. I'm just saying that that part of this relationship, I was just kind of like, I'd like to call some people out on some things." Elise, I, checked Snow for the Ripley thing, the rest I haven't investigated yet because I wanna believe she's quoting movies. Yeah, some of them seemed, a lot of those seemed like stretches when I saw the 10 different ones, but the Ripley one, I'd like to look into a little bit more. CR3D says, "I don't think that's what actually went down. JD easily could have been a sellout in his prime. I think he actually mentored her and offered advice and encouragement." That's fine if that's how you perceived it. That's not how I really perceived it. I perceived them both as being very kind of jealous and possessive. And not only that, but we heard a lot of testimony about him being very, suspicious of her cheating on him, but then at the same time we have seen evidence that she likely was cheating on him. So there was a lot of that dynamic going on between them, it seemed. Lexi Love says, "Hi, I'm super late, so I'm starting from the beginning, but really wanted to say you look beautiful today." Thank you. That's so sweet. You're gonna get this message at the very end of the live, but that was very sweet. Um, we always have banana feet in the chat. What does that mean? Um I think a lot of the video Elizabeth says, "I think a lot of the video analyses are interesting to watch, but I imagine it's highly unlikely that the jury will ever pick up on all the madness we've been able to." Yeah, multiple angles and replays, especially because we're able to have these conversations and they can't. They can't even have these conversations with each other yet. So, yeah, there's a lot that they're not going to there's a lot of discussion that people are having that they cannot be part of. So, yeah, so I agree. I think there's just gonna be a lot that they don't see that we do as outsiders that are able to, connect with each other and point these things out. Like, did you notice this? Did you notice that? And also, like, I listened to this expert and they gave their opinion on this, and that expert gave their opinion on this. So, okay, but do we believe that Amber Heard had cocaine and alcohol in the courtroom? I don't. No, no, I don't. I do wonder if part of the reason that they had, um, like, one thing that they were saying was like, "Oh my gosh, he's able to chew gum in the courtroom," and somebody pointed out it might be that the court understood that Johnny Depp is a heavy smoker, and so it could possibly was nicotine gum, and then Emily D. Baker was like, "Oh my gosh, they have candy in the courtroom," and I would believe that it's a possibility, just being an alcoholic myself in sobriety, um, I believe that that also could be kind of a crutch if he is struggling, right? I don't know whether or not he is, and um, I'm not going to speculate as to whether or not he is currently struggling with that, or dealing with that, because that's not my place to say, and that's not any of our places to say about anybody who, deals with addiction and sobriety. But, if that is something that he struggles with, then the presence of candy could be something that helps with that. Because if you didn't know, because essentially when you're drinking lots and lots of liquor, that's just straight sugar. It's a lot of sugar, carbs, and so when you do stop, when you stop cold, it can be, a lot of people early in sobriety get a really strong sweet tooth, and I've had one. Mine is finally starting to die down a little bit, but I had one really bad for years and years. But also the big book, of AA teaches you to keep chocolate on hand. So when you have cravings, you're able to, like, to have a little bit of sugar kick that, satisfies part of that craving. So, um, I wish I knew what the banana foot is that y'all are laughing about. Um, um Hmm. I don't know that I have all the context for what y'all are talking about now. Um, Elizabeth does say, "No, not at all. I could buy something to help make her cry." Yeah, maybe, but it's a stretch. The cocaine thing is just too far of a reach. I agree. I agree. And that was something that, Emily D. Baker was saying, was that potentially, um, menthol to make her cry, especially the way she was, like, digging in her nose, like, with the tissue, but then, like, wiping with the back of her hand. It's just like, I don't know. It was Lexi Euphoria stream, I think. There was some reference to banana feet? I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Um, You can see him say to his lawyer, "Is a jar of dirt." Huh? Hello, Ricardo. We're actually just about done here. We're just finishing up some last chats here. Um, CR3D says men typically only act this way when they feel inferior to the girl they're with. JD has dated women far hotter than Amber Heard. That's an interesting postulation. I think it has more to do with the type of man. Some men are not the jealous types at all, no matter what. Like look at Bobby Lee and Kalila Kuhn. Like if you want to talk about a woman who's far more like conventionally attractive than her partner, but he doesn't like when she talks about it, he doesn't have that like jealous bone that a lot of people have. Um, But yeah, I'm sure, like, if we were to analyze why people feel that way, it has to come from some place, some feelings of inferiority or lack of self-esteem or things like that, I believe. You'll find it and send it to me. Thank you, Rosie. Banana foot came from a stream a couple streams ago, I think, where someone's autocorrect put a foot and a banana in, and I remember thinking it was something sexual. It just became a thing after that. That's so funny. That's so funny too that there was a whole inside joke in my community that I didn't know about. That's some fun. That's funny. Some men can trust, others can't, and some people can trust and some can't. That's the other thing too is that, um, they oh, it was Fresh and Fit that was talking about and of course, we know they're idiots, but talking about how men are possessive, men are possessive, men are possessive. This doesn't count because men are possessive. That's why women need to do this. Women can't post thirst traps on Instagram if they're in a relationship because men are possessive. And it's like can be possessive too. People are possessive depending on, who you're dealing with and what issues they have going on with themselves. Um, anyway, I think that's about as much analysis of this trial I can handle for tonight. Ricardo, Fresh and Fit are just Neanderthals with platforms. Yeah. How did that happen? Just a glitch in the matrix or something. Um, I'm a man, trust me, if a man doesn't get jealous even a little bit, he's not very into you. Disagree with you. I disagree with you. I disagree. I think everybody's different. Of course, I like somebody who can have a pinch of jealousy to them, but, um, I believe I believe certain people when they say, like, like Kalila Kuhn her says, "My boyfriend" they've been together for 10 years. You do get to a point where, like, you can't sustain that kind of jealousy. Mm, people do become famous for the most random things, Ricardo. So, alright. Didn't know that everyone of a gender can be inside the brain of everyone else of that gender. All right, before things start to blow up, thank you guys for having this discussion with me, especially because I knew that when talking about this topic, I would be kind of like a little bit all over the map, and that I was going to have opinions that swayed this way and opinions that swayed that way, and I didn't know how that would fare in front of an audience. So I appreciate you guys allowing me to kind of go there and have a nuanced conversation, a complex conversation about this. We know, like we said, we know people don't like complexity. They don't like things to be complicated. We like things to be simple. We like things to be polarized. We like it to be a one answer for all type of situation when we know on this channel, we don't believe that in most situations that there's a one fits all answer. So yeah, so thank you for having this conversation with me. Thank you for welcoming me back. Open to any ideas you guys have for what you'd like to see on this wall, although there's not much real estate there. But yeah, hopefully we'll get a little bit more set up here and get back on the YouTube grind, and hopefully we'll start seeing some videos from me before too long. I don't know if I can promise that. Again, patrons, no Patreon live this Thursday. I will be out, but we absolutely can meet on Friday or Sunday. Why don't we talk on Discord and see which day works best for you guys? Um, Rebecca, really, I'm sorry. You actually caught me on my way out. All right, guys, you guys are the best. Thank you. I love you, and I'll see you next time. Bye.